The team stood frozen, staring at the massive structure embedded in the ground. It pulsed faintly, its surface shifting like liquid metal but solid to the touch. Strange symbols glowed along its edges, emitting a soft hum that vibrated through their suits. Ethan tightened his grip on his weapon, his eyes scanning the area for any sign of movement. Rachel knelt beside the structure, her scanner beeping rapidly as it struggled to process the readings. "This isn't just alien," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "It's alive." Kevin stepped closer, his rifle aimed steadily at the structure. "Alive? You mean like some kind of machine-creature hybrid?" Rachel nodded, though uncertainty lingered in her expression. "I don't know how else to explain it. Look at the way it moves, it's adapting, changing shape, and these energy signatures." She paused, glancing at her screen. "They're not random, they're communicating." "Communicating with what?" Samantha asked, her tone sharp with concern. She adjusted her toolkit, ready to dismantle or disable anything that posed a threat. "That's the problem," Rachel admitted. "We don't know. But whatever this thing is, it's part of what destroyed Earth." Ethan exhaled sharply, his mind racing. "If this is Zytherian tech, then we need to figure out how it works. And fast. If they come back looking for it, we're sitting ducks." The group exchanged uneasy glances. None of them wanted to imagine an encounter with the beings responsible for Earth's devastation. Still, they couldn't ignore the possibility. Laura had warned them about the risks before they left Mars, and now those warnings felt painfully real. Samantha crouched beside Rachel, examining the glowing symbols. "Can you translate any of this?" she asked, pointing to one of the patterns. Rachel shook her head. "Not yet. It's too complex. But I think if we can record enough data, we might be able to decode it later." "Later won't matter if we're dead," Kevin muttered under his breath. He kept his weapon trained on the structure, his finger hovering near the trigger. "We should destroy it, whatever it is, it's dangerous." "No," Rachel snapped, surprising even herself with the force of her response. "We can't just blow it up without understanding what it does. This could be our only chance to learn about these Etherians, to find out why they did this." Ethan raised a hand, cutting off the argument before it escalated. "Both of you have a point," he said firmly. "But arguing isn't going to help us. Let's focus on gathering as much intel as we can while staying safe. If things go south, we'll deal with it then." Reluctantly, the others agreed. Over the next hour, they worked together to document the structure. Samantha rigged small cameras around its base to capture continuous footage, while Rachel collected samples of the strange material using a portable extraction tool. Ethan and Kevin maintained a defensive perimeter, their weapons at the ready. Every sound, a distant rumble, the creak of collapsing debris, set their nerves on edge. As they worked, Rachel noticed something unusual. Beneath the pulsing surface of the structure, faint outlines began to emerge. At first they were indistinct, almost like shadows. But as she adjusted her scanner, the shapes became clearer. Human figures. Dozens of them. Frozen mid-motion, their faces twisted in agony. "Oh God," she whispered, backing away instinctively. Her voice caught the attention of the others, who rushed to her side. "What is it?" Ethan asked, his tone urgent. Rachel pointed at the structure. "Look. Inside. They stared in horror as the translucent forms came into view. Men, women, children, all preserved within the alien construct. Their bodies seemed suspended in time, trapped in a state between life and death. Ethan clenched his jaw, forcing himself to look away. "This is sick," he muttered. "What kind of monster would do this?" "It's worse than that," Rachel said quietly. She tapped her scanner again, highlighting specific areas of the structure. "These aren't just bodies. They're experiments. Look at the way the material is fused with their cells. It's like they're being used as components, parts of the machine itself." A chill ran down Samantha's spine. "You're saying they turned humans into fuel or weapons?" Rachel corrected grimly. "Whatever this thing is, it feeds off living tissue. That's why there's no one left on Earth. They didn't just kill us, they consumed us." The revelation hit them hard. For a moment, none of them spoke. The weight of what they'd discovered pressed down on them, heavier than the oppressive silence of the ruined city. Humanity hadn't simply been wiped out. It had been harvested, reduced to raw material for an alien agenda they couldn't begin to comprehend. "We need to get this information back to Laura," Ethan said finally, breaking the silence. "If the colonies are going to stand a chance, they need to know exactly what we're dealing with." Rachel nodded, her hands trembling, as she packed up her equipment. "Agreed, but we also need proof. Something tangible that shows the Council what we're up against." Samantha glanced at the structure, her mind working quickly. "Leave that to me. I'll rig explosives around the base. If we can't take it with us, we'll at least make sure it doesn't fall into enemy hands again." While Samantha set charges, Ethan and Kevin scoured the surrounding area for additional clues. In a nearby building, they found remnants of what appeared to be a laboratory. Shattered glass vials, charred papers, and half-melted computer terminals littered the floor. Among the debris, Ethan spotted a partially intact display screen. After some tinkering, he managed to power it on. The screen flickered to life, displaying fragmented footage of humanoid creatures moving in jerky motions. Their features were distorted, almost insect-like, with elongated limbs and shimmering exoskeletons. "Is that them?" Kevin asked, his voice low. "The Zetherians?" Ethan squinted at the screen. "Has to be. No human could look like that." The video cut to a series of diagrams showing the same structure they'd found outside. Annotations written in an alien script accompanied each image, detailing what looked like deployment instructions. Ethan recorded everything onto a portable drive, his hands shaking slightly. "This is it," he said. "This proves they're behind all of this." By the time they returned to the red horizon, the sun was setting, or rather what passed, for sunset in a world shrouded in ash and dust. The sky burned orange and red, casting long shadows over the ruins. It was beautiful in a haunting way, a stark reminder of everything humanity had lost. Back aboard the ship, the team gathered in the cockpit to review their findings. Rachel uploaded the samples and data into the onboard computer, running preliminary analyses. Ethan plugged the drive containing the video footage into the main console, playing it for everyone to see. "They're bigger than I expected," Kevin remarked, studying the grainy images. "And those claws looks like they don't mess around," Samantha frowned. "If they're capable of building something like that structure, then their technology must be light years ahead of ours. How are we supposed to fight that? We adapt," Ethan replied firmly. "We've always found ways to survive no matter the odds. This is no different." Laura's voice crackled over the comm system, interrupting their conversation. "Red Horizon, report your status. Have you retrieved the intel?" Ethan leaned forward, activating the mic. "Affirmative, Laura. We've got confirmation that the Gytherians are responsible for Earth's destruction. We also found evidence of biological experiments, humans integrated into their machines." Sending the data now. There was a pause on the other end. When Laura spoke again, her voice was tight with emotion. "Understood. Get back here immediately. The Council needs to see this." As Ethan ended the transmission, Rachel slumped into her seat, exhaustion etched across her face. "Do you think they'll believe us?" she asked quietly. "Will they understand how serious this is?" "They'll have to," Kevin said, "because if they don't, we're all dead." The journey back to Mars was tense and silent. Each member of the team wrestled with their own thoughts, replaying the horrors they'd witnessed on Earth. Despite their efforts to stay focused, the reality of their discovery weighed heavily on them. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. It was fighting for vengeance, for justice. When the Red Horizon touched down on Martian soil, a crowd of colonists awaited them. Word of their mission had spread quickly, and everyone wanted answers. Laura greeted them personally, her expression unreadable as Ethan handed her the drive containing the footage and data. "This changes everything," she said after reviewing the contents. "If the Zetherians see us as a threat, then they'll come for us next. We need to prepare." Over the following days, the Council convened emergency meetings to discuss their options. The evidence presented by the team left no room for doubt. The Zetherians were not only real but also exceedingly dangerous. Some argued for immediate retaliation, proposing a preemptive strike against known Zetherian strongholds. Others advocated for caution, suggesting they fortify the colonies and develop countermeasures before engaging the enemy directly. In the end, a compromise was reached. A task force would be assembled to locate and infiltrate the nearest Zetherian outpost, gathering intelligence while avoiding direct confrontation unless absolutely necessary. If diplomacy proved impossible, then military action would follow. The decision wasn't made lightly, but it was unanimous. Humanity had been pushed to the brink, and now it was time to push back. Ethan, Rachel, Samantha, and Kevin were selected to lead the mission. Though their RO. Part 2. Searching for answers. The silence from Earth weighed heavily on everyone in the Martian colony. Days turned into a week, and still there was no response. The images captured by the drones haunted the colonists. Cities reduced to rubble, streets empty of life, and an eerie stillness that seemed unnatural. Laura Bennett spent most of her time in the control room, poring over data and coordinating efforts with other colonies across the solar system. She knew they couldn't afford to sit idle. Every second counted if they wanted to figure out what had happened. Daniel Carter stayed close to his station, running endless tests on the signals, or lack thereof, coming from Earth. His frustration grew with each passing hour. "It's like the planet just vanished," he muttered one evening, rubbing his temples. Across the room, Ethan Cole glanced up from where he was reviewing drone footage. A pilot by trade, Ethan had been brought in to help analyze the aerial scans of Earth's surface. "Maybe it didn't vanish," Ethan said quietly. "Maybe someone made sure we wouldn't find anything." His words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Laura looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" Ethan hesitated before answering. "Think about it. No survivors, no broadcasts, not even stray radio waves bouncing around. If this was some kind of attack, whoever did it cleaned up after themselves pretty well." Laura nodded slowly, considering his theory. It made sense, horrifying as it was. If Earth had been targeted deliberately, then the attackers would have taken steps to erase any trace of humanity's presence. That level of precision suggested advanced technology and possibly intelligence far beyond human capabilities. To gather more information, Laura decided to send additional drones equipped with specialized sensors designed to detect energy signatures. These devices were originally created to study anomalies in space, but they might be able to pick up traces of whatever weapon or force had devastated Earth. Rachel Miller, a biologist who specialized in extraterrestrial ecosystems, volunteered to oversee the analysis of the new data. Though she wasn't trained in engineering, her expertise in identifying patterns could prove invaluable. As the drones returned with fresh readings, the team gathered in the main control room to review the results. The energy signatures detected near Earth's major cities were unlike anything they'd encountered before. They pulsed erratically, almost like a heartbeat, and radiated frequencies that defied explanation. Daniel zoomed in on one particularly, strong signal emanating from what used to be New York City. "This doesn't match anything in our database," he said, pointing at the screen. "Whatever caused this isn't natural." Rachel leaned closer, her brow furrowed. "Could it be alien?" she asked cautiously. The question lingered in the air, unspoken until now. Laura exhaled sharply. "We can't rule it out anymore," she admitted. "If this is the work of another species, we need to know who they are and why they did this." The mention of aliens sparked heated debates among the team. Some, like Ethan, argued that humanity needed to prepare for the worst-case scenario, retaliation against whoever, or whatever, had destroyed Earth. Others, including Rachel, urged caution. "We don't even know if these aliens are hostile," she countered. "Jumping to conclusions could make things worse." Despite their differences, everyone agreed on one thing. They needed more answers. Laura assigned teams to dig deeper into the energy signatures, cross-referencing them with known records of extraterrestrial activity. It didn't take long for a name to emerge: the Zetherians. The Zetherians had long been the stuff of rumors and speculation. Stories of their existence dated back decades, whispered among scientists and conspiracy theorists alike. According to legend, the Zetherians were a highly advanced species capable of traveling vast distances through space. They were said to view other civilizations as threats to their dominance, wiping them out without hesitation. Most people dismissed these tales as fiction, but the evidence collected from Earth bore striking similarities to descriptions of Zetherian technology. When Laura presented her findings to the council overseeing the Martian colony, the reaction was immediate. Shock gave way to anger and then to resolve. Jacob Hayes, the leader of the lunar colony, joined the meeting via video link, his face grim. "If the Zetherians are responsible for this," he said, his voice steady but laced with fury, "then they've declared war on all of us. We can't let them get away with it." His words resonated deeply with the others. The colonies had always operated semi-independently, each focused on its own survival. But now, faced with a common enemy, they began to unite under a shared purpose. Laura proposed forming a task force to investigate further and, if necessary, confront the Zetherians directly. The council approved her plan unanimously. Selecting members for the mission proved challenging. They needed individuals skilled in combat, engineering, and diplomacy, people who could adapt to unpredictable situations. Ethan volunteered immediately, citing his experience as a pilot. Rachel, though hesitant at first, eventually agreed to join, driven by a desire to understand the biological implications of the attack. Laura rounded out the team with Samantha Drake, an engineer known for her ingenuity, and Kevin Yates, a soldier whose calm demeanor masked a fierce determination. Before departing, the team spent days preparing. Drones continued to scour Earth's surface, gathering more intel while avoiding detection. Meanwhile, Ethan worked tirelessly to modify their ship, a repurposed cargo vessel called the Red Horizon, for stealth operations. He installed shielding to mask their energy signature and upgraded the engines for faster travel. Samantha added weapon systems scavenged from decommissioned mining equipment, ensuring they'd have some means of defense if attacked. During one of their final briefings, Laura addressed the group. "This mission is dangerous," she warned, her tone serious but encouraging. "We're going into unknown territory, facing an enemy we barely understand. But we owe it to the billions who died on Earth to find out the truth, and to stop them if we can." Her words struck a chord with everyone present. For Ethan, it was personal. His younger sister had been living in Chicago when the attack occurred. Though he hadn't spoken to her in years, the thought of never seeing her again filled him with grief and rage. Rachel, too, carried a burden of loss. Her parents had remained on Earth, refusing to leave despite repeated offers to relocate to Mars, and Kevin, whose entire family had perished in the destruction, channeled his pain into focus, vowing to honor their memory by fighting back. On the day of departure, the atmosphere in the hangar was tense. Dozens of colonists gathered to watch as the Red Horizon prepared for launch. Laura approached the team one last time, shaking hands with each member. When she reached Ethan, she placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "Bring us answers," she said simply. He nodded, his jaw set with determination. As the ship lifted off, leaving Mars behind, the weight of their mission settled over them. Ahead lay the remnants of Earth, and perhaps the key to understanding humanity's greatest tragedy. Behind them stretched the fragile hope of the colonies, counting on their success. For better or worse, the fate of humanity rested in their hands. Inside the cockpit, Ethan gripped the controls tightly, staring out at the vast expanse of stars. Beside him, Rachel adjusted her seat, clutching a small tablet filled with notes and hypotheses. In the cargo bay, Kevin checked his weapons one last time, while Samantha tinkered with the ship's systems, making sure everything was functioning perfectly. For hours they traveled in silence, each lost in their thoughts. The closer they got to Earth, the heavier the air became. Finally, Ethan broke the quiet. "Do you think we'll find anyone alive down there?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Rachel hesitated before answering. "I don't know," she admitted. "But even if we don't, we'll still learn something. Maybe enough to stop this from happening again. Her words offered little comfort, but they clung to them nonetheless. As the red horizon entered Earth's orbit, the planet loomed large in the viewport, a pale blue marble marred by scars of devastation. The sight sent a shiver down Ethan's spine. This was once home to billions, teeming with life and culture. Now it was a graveyard. Guided by the energy signatures, they descended toward New York City. The ruins below were surreal, like something out of a nightmare. Skyscrapers stood like broken teeth against the skyline, their windows shattered and walls crumbling. Streets were littered with debris, vehicles abandoned mid-journey. There was no movement, no sound. Only the wind whistling through the skeletal remains of civilization. Ethan landed the ship carefully on a flat stretch of pavement near Times Square. The team suited up quickly, their helmets sealing with a soft hiss. Armed with scanners and cameras, they stepped onto the desolate streets, their boots crunching against glass and concrete. Every step felt surreal. Familiar landmarks were unrecognizable, twisted and torn apart. Posters advertising concerts and movies fluttered in the breeze, relics of a world that no longer existed. Rachel paused beside a toppled statue, her eyes scanning the ground. "Look, at this," she said, pointing to strange markings etched into the asphalt. They glowed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with the energy signatures they'd detected earlier. Kevin knelt beside her, examining the marks closely. "Whatever this is not human," he muttered. As they explored further, the team discovered Mo. The Martian colony was quiet, as it usually was during the early hours of the Sol. The red dust swirled lazily outside the reinforced glass windows of the communications hub, and the hum of machinery filled the air. Daniel Carter sat at his station, staring at the screens in front of him. His job wasn't glamorous, monitoring incoming signals from Earth and relaying updates to the other colonies. But it was important. Communication was the lifeline that kept humanity's scattered outposts connected across the vast distances of space. Today, though, something felt off. It had been nearly 12 hours since the last routine transmission from Earth. That wasn't unusual on its own. Delays happen sometimes due to solar flares or technical issues. But this time there was no explanation, no error messages, no static-filled interruptions, just silence. Daniel leaned forward, tapping commands into his console to run a diagnostic check. Everything on his end seemed fine. He tried reaching out again, sending pings to multiple satellites orbiting Earth. Still nothing. "Hey, Laura," he called over his shoulder, breaking the quiet. "Can you come take a look at this?" Laura Bennett appeared a moment later, her boots clicking softly against the metal floor. She was tall, with sharp features and an air of calm authority that made people trust her instantly. As the head of operations for the Martian colony, she was used to handling problems quickly and efficiently. Right now, though, her brow furrowed as she glanced at Daniel's screen. "What's going on?" she asked, pulling up a chair beside him. "I'm not getting anything from Earth," Daniel replied, frustration creeping into his voice. "No signals, no responses. It's like they've gone completely dark." Laura frowned, leaning closer to study the data. "That's impossible. Even if there was some kind of catastrophic failure, we'd still pick up residual transmissions or emergency broadcasts. Something." She tapped a few keys, rerouting the signal through backup systems. Nothing changed. The silence persisted, heavy and unnatural. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Laura stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "We need to alert the others," she said firmly. "This isn't just a glitch. Something's wrong. Really wrong." Word spread quickly through the colony. Within minutes, engineers, scientists, and administrators gathered in the main control room, their faces etched with concern. Laura briefed them on the situation, her tone measured but urgent. Everyone agreed. They needed answers, and fast. Over. The next several hours, teams worked tirelessly to investigate the anomaly. Drones equipped with advanced sensors were deployed, flying toward Earth's orbit to gather more information. Meanwhile, efforts continued to establish contact using every available frequency. The tension in the room grew palpable as each attempt failed. It wasn't long before murmurs of unease turned into outright fear. Finally, one of the drones transmitted footage back to Mars. The images flickered onto the main screen, grainy but clear enough to send a chill through everyone watching. Cities lay in ruins, their once bustling streets now eerily empty. Skyscrapers had crumbled into rubble, and fires smoldered unchecked in the distance. There were no signs of life, not a single moving figure, vehicle, or aircraft. It looked like a world frozen in time, abandoned by its inhabitants. "Oh my God," someone whispered, breaking the stunned silence. Daniel stared at the screen, his hands trembling slightly. He couldn't tear his eyes away from the devastation. London, New York, Tokyo, all reduced to ghost towns. Whatever had happened, it had been swift and merciless. The thought sent a cold knot twisting in his stomach. Laura stepped forward, her expression grim but resolute. "We don't know what caused this yet," she said, addressing the group. "But we can't afford to panic. We need to focus on finding out what happened and why." Her words steadied the room somewhat, though the underlying dread remained. Over the next few days, more drones were sent to different parts of Earth, capturing similar scenes of destruction wherever they went. Each new piece of footage added to the growing sense of horror. Entire continents had been wiped clean of human presence, leaving behind only desolation. As the reality sank in, so did the implications. If Earth was truly uninhabitable, if every human on the planet had been killed, then the colonies were all that remained of humanity. The weight of that responsibility pressed down on everyone, especially those in leadership positions like Laura. They weren't just dealing with a crisis anymore, they were facing extinction. But amidst the despair, questions began to surface. What could possibly have caused such widespread devastation? Natural disasters didn't explain the precision of the destruction, and if it wasn't natural, Daniel voiced the thought that had been lurking in the back of everyone's minds. "Do you think aliens?" he asked hesitantly during one of the late-night meetings. The room fell silent. It sounded absurd, like something out of a science fiction movie. But given the circumstances, it wasn't entirely far-fetched. Humanity had colonized Mars and established outposts on moons like Europa and Titan, but they hadn't encountered intelligent extraterrestrial life. Until now, perhaps. Laura nodded slowly. "It's a possibility we can't ignore," she admitted. "If this was an attack, we need to find out who or what did it." With renewed determination, the team focused their efforts on analyzing the data collected by the drones. Hidden within the ruins of Earth's cities were faint energy signatures, unlike anything they'd seen before. These patterns suggested the use of highly advanced technology far beyond human capabilities. One name kept coming up in their discussions: the Zetherians. Rumors of this alien species had circulated among scientists for years, though concrete evidence of their existence had always been elusive. Described as ruthless and expansionist, the Zetherians were said to view other civilizations as threats to be eliminated. Until now, most people had dismissed the stories as speculation, but faced with the annihilation of Earth, those rumors suddenly seemed terrifyingly plausible. As the days dragged on, the truth became harder to deny. Whatever, or whoever, had destroyed Earth was out there somewhere, and they might not stop with one planet. The colonies were vulnerable, scattered across the solar system with limited resources and defenses. If the Zetherians decided to target them next, humanity wouldn't stand a chance. Yet even in the face of such overwhelming odds, a spark of defiance began to ignite. People talked about fighting back, about avenging the billions lost on Earth. Laura listened to these conversations, seeing both the hope and the desperation in their eyes. She knew they couldn't act rashly. They needed a plan, a strategy. But she also knew one thing for certain: they wouldn't go down without a fight. For now, though, all they could do was wait and prepare. The silence of Earth loomed large, a grim reminder of what had been lost. But deep down, Laura held on to a fragile hope that humanity's resilience, its unyielding spirit, would see them through whatever came next. The Martian colony buzzed with activity as news of the Zitherians spread like wildfire. The discovery that Earth's destruction was not a random catastrophe, but a calculated attack by an alien species sent shockwaves through every outpost in the solar system. Fear turned to anger, and anger fueled determination. For the first time in decades, humanity stood united, not just as scattered colonies struggling to survive, but as a single force ready to fight back. Laura Bennett took charge of organizing the response. She knew they couldn't afford to waste time. If the Zitherians were aware of their presence, it was only a matter of time before they struck again. "We need to act quickly," she told the council during one of their daily meetings. "They've already shown us what they're capable of. If we don't prepare now, we'll be wiped out just like Earth." The council agreed, and plans were set into motion. Engineers, scientists, and soldiers from across the colonies poured into Mars, pooling their resources and expertise to build a fleet capable of standing up to the Zitherians. It wasn't going to be easy. Most of humanity's ships were designed for mining, transportation, or research, not combat. But necessity breeds innovation, and the colonists were nothing if not resourceful. Samantha Drake became one of the key figures in the effort. Her workshop transformed into a hive of activity, filled with tools, spare parts, and half-finished prototypes. Mining vessels and cargo ships lined up outside, waiting to be retrofitted into war machines. Samantha worked tirelessly alongside her team, stripping down engines, reinforcing hulls, and installing weapons systems scavenged from decommissioned equipment. Plasma cannons, EMP devices, and missile launchers replaced drills and storage compartments, turning clunky industrial ships into formidable weapons of war. "This isn't elegant," Samantha muttered one evening as she welded a new shield generator onto the side of a repurposed transport ship. "But it'll get the job done." Kevin Yates, who had been assigned to oversee security upgrades, nodded in agreement. "Elegant doesn't matter right now," he said, tightening bolts on a turret mount. "All that matters is surviving long enough to hit them back." While Samantha focused on the technical side, Kevin trained soldiers for the battles ahead. He led rigorous drills in the colony's simulated combat arenas, pushing recruits to their limits. Many of them had never seen real combat before, let alone faced an alien enemy. But Kevin didn't sugarcoat the truth. He knew hesitation could cost lives. "Out there, you won't have time to think," he barked during one training session. "You either move or you die. Got it?" His words resonated deeply with the recruits, especially those who had lost loved ones on Earth. Anger burned in their eyes as they practiced maneuvers, fired practice rounds, and learned how to operate the newly modified ships. They weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for revenge. Rachel Miller spent her days analyzing the data collected from Earth, searching for weaknesses in the Zitherian technology. Her lab became a second home, cluttered with samples, diagrams, and glowing screens displaying complex algorithms. She collaborated closely with other scientists, sharing insights and brainstorming strategies. Though the task felt overwhelming at times, Rachel refused to give up. "If we can understand how their tech works," she explained during a meeting, "we might be able to exploit it against them." Her breakthrough came unexpectedly. While examining fragments of the strange material found in New York City, Rachel noticed something peculiar. The substance reacted violently to certain wavelengths of electromagnetic radiation. Further testing revealed that exposure to these frequencies caused the material to destabilize, breaking down into harmless dust. It wasn't much, but it was a start. A potential weapon against the Zitherians. When she presented her findings to Laura, the reaction was immediate. "This could change everything," Laura said, her voice tinged with excitement. "If we can replicate this effect on a larger scale, we might stand a chance." Orders went out to equip every ship with emitters capable of generating the destabilizing frequencies. Engineers scrambled to integrate the technology, working around the clock to meet the tight deadline. Meanwhile, Ethan Cole prepared the Red Horizon for its next mission. As pilot of the task force's flagship, he bore the weight of responsibility heavily, but carried it with quiet determination. Every modification, every upgrade, brought them closer to confronting the enemy, and closer to avenging Earth. Amidst the chaos, Laura struggled to keep her emotions in check. She had always prided herself on being level-headed, pragmatic even, in the face of adversity. But the enormity of what they were facing weighed on her constantly. Late at night, when the control room emptied and the hum of machinery faded to silence, she allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. Staring out at the red sands, stretching endlessly beyond the colony walls, she thought about the billions who had died on Earth, the friends, family, and strangers whose voices would never be heard again. "We won't forget you," she whispered softly, her breath fogging the glass. "Whatever happens, your sacrifice will mean something." By the time the fleet was ready, morale among the colonists had reached an all-time high. Ships lined up in formation above Mars, their sleek exteriors gleaming under the artificial lights of the orbital docks. Soldiers marched confidently toward boarding ramps, their uniforms adorned with patches symbolizing unity and resilience. Civilians gathered to watch, cheering and waving flags made from scraps of fabric. It was a moment of hope amidst despair, AWOL. Reminder that humanity still had fight left in it. Jacob Hayes, leader of the lunar colony, delivered a rousing speech before the fleet departed. Standing atop a makeshift platform, his voice carried over the crowd via loudspeakers. "Today we stand together as one people," he declared, his tone fierce yet steady. "We are not defined by our losses, but by our courage to rise above them. To the Zetherians we send a message. You may have taken our home, but you will not take our spirit. We will find you and we will make you pay." The applause was deafening, echoing off the metal structures surrounding the launch site. As the ships powered up, their engines roaring to life, the crowd fell silent, watching with bated breath. This was more than a military operation. It was a declaration of war, a promise to honor the fallen by ensuring their deaths were not in vain. Inside the cockpit of the Red Horizon, Ethan gripped the controls tightly, his knuckles white. Beside him, Rachel adjusted her seat, clutching a stack of notes detailing their plan of attack. In the cargo bay, Kevin double-checked his weapons, ensuring each magazine was loaded and secure. Samantha tinkered with the last-minute adjustments to the ship's systems, muttering under her breath about power fluctuations. "Ready?" Ethan asked, glancing at Rachel. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied, forcing a small smile. "Let's do this." With a final burst of thrust, the fleet launched into space, leaving Mars behind. Ahead lay uncharted territory, fraught with danger and uncertainty. But for the first time since Earth's destruction, humanity had a purpose. A reason to keep moving forward. Revenge burned in their hearts, but so did hope. Hope that they could reclaim their future no matter the cost. As the stars stretched into streaks of light outside the viewport, Ethan leaned back in his seat, his mind racing. He thought about his sister, about the life she'd had before the attack. He thought about the billions who had perished, their voices silenced forever. And he thought about the fight ahead, a battle not just for survival, but for justice. "We're coming for you," he murmured, staring out at the endless void. "And when we find you, you'll wish you'd never messed with us." The journey to the nearest Zetherian outpost would take days, maybe weeks, but none of them doubted the outcome. Humanity had been pushed to the brink, but it had not been broken. Not yet. The journey to the Zetherian outpost was long and tense. Days passed in silence as the fleet drifted through the vast emptiness of space, each ship a small speck against the infinite backdrop of stars. Inside the Red Horizon, the mood was somber, but focused. Ethan Cole sat at the controls, his eyes scanning the instruments for any sign of trouble. Rachel Miller pored over data on her tablet, double-checking their course and analyzing every detail they had about the enemy. Kevin Yates cleaned his weapons methodically, ensuring each piece was in perfect condition. Samantha Drake tinkered with the ship's systems, making last-minute adjustments to ensure everything ran smoothly. Despite their preparation, none of them could shake the feeling of unease that lingered in the air. They were heading into uncharted territory, facing an enemy they barely understood. The Zetherians weren't just advanced, they were ruthless, capable of wiping out entire civilizations without hesitation. Every hour that passed brought them closer to a confrontation that could mean life or death for humanity. Ethan broke the silence first. "How much longer?" he asked, glancing at the navigation screen. Rachel looked up from her tablet. "About 12 hours, she replied. "If we maintain this speed, we should reach the coordinates by morning." "Morning," Ethan muttered under his breath. "Feels like it's been weeks already." Kevin chuckled dryly. "You're telling me I haven't slept in days. Can't stop thinking about what we're walking into." Samantha glanced at him from her workstation. "None of us can. But worrying won't help. We've done everything we can to prepare. Now it's up to luck and skill." Her words were meant to reassure, but they only added to the tension. Luck had never been humanity's strongest ally, especially when facing forces far beyond their understanding. Still, they clung to the hope that their ingenuity and determination would be enough to tip the scales in their favor. As the hours ticked by, the crew began to notice subtle changes in their surroundings. The sensors picked up faint energy readings, flickering, pulses that matched the patterns they'd seen back on Earth. It was confirmation that they were on the right track, but it also served as a grim reminder of what awaited them. The Zetherians were out there watching, waiting. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the outpost came into view. It loomed ahead of them, a massive structure floating in the void of space, its surface shimmering with an otherworldly glow. Jagged spires jutted outward like claws, and strange symbols pulsed along its edges, casting eerie shadows across the hull. Weapons platforms bristled along its perimeter, ready to unleash destruction on anyone foolish enough to approach. Ethan slowed the red horizon to a crawl, allowing the rest of the fleet to catch up. Over the comm system, Laura's voice crackled to life. "This is it," she said, her tone steady but tinged with urgency. "Remember the plan. Stick to formation, and don't engage unless absolutely necessary." The plan was simple. Infiltrate the outpost, gather intelligence, and disable key systems to weaken the Zetherians' defenses. If all went well, they could strike a decisive blow without risking too many lives. But everyone knew how fragile that "if" really was. As they approached, the outpost's defenses sprang to life. Energy beams lanced through space, forcing the fleet to scatter. Ships fired back, their plasma cannons lighting up the darkness with bursts of blue and green. The battle erupted quickly, chaos spreading as both sides exchanged fire. Explosions lit up the void, debris spiraling outward. In slow motion, "We're taking heavy damage," one of the pilots shouted over the comms. "Shields are down to 30%. "Stay focused," Laura commanded. "Keep moving, don't let them pin you down." Ethan gritted his teeth, maneuvering the red horizon through the storm of projectiles. Beside him, Rachel gripped the edge of her seat, her knuckles white. "We need to find a way inside," she said urgently. "If we can breach their shields, we might have a chance." Ethan nodded, his mind racing. He spotted a weak point in the outpost's defense grid, a gap between two weapon turrets where the shielding seemed thinner. "Kevin, prep the boarding team," he ordered. "We're going in." Kevin didn't hesitate. He grabbed his rifle and signaled to the others. Together, they made their way to the airlock, strapping on their helmets and checking their gear, one last time. As the red horizon positioned itself near the weak point, Ethan activated the ship's EMP device, sending a pulse of electromagnetic energy toward the outpost. For a brief moment, the shields flickered and died. "Now!" Ethan yelled. The boarding team launched themselves toward the outpost, propelled by magnetic grapples attached to the hull. One by one, they landed on the surface, their boots locking into place as they activated their magnetic souls. Kevin led the charge, cutting through a hatch with a plasma torch while Ethan and Rachel covered him from behind. Inside, the corridors were dimly lit, filled with strange machinery that hummed softly. The walls seemed to pulse with the same organic material they'd encountered on Earth, glowing faintly in the darkness. Rachel scanned the area, her device picking up faint traces of biological activity. "There's something alive in here," she whispered. "Be careful." Kevin raised his weapon, his finger hovering near the trigger. "No kidding," he muttered. "Let's move." They moved cautiously, sticking to the shadows as they navigated deeper into the outpost. Along the way, they encountered resistance, Cytherian drones, sleek and insect-like, patrolling the halls. Each encounter was brief but intense, the sharp crack of gunfire echoing through the narrow passages. Kevin's aim was deadly accurate, taking down the drones before they could sound the alarm. Their objective was clear: disable the shield generator. Without it, the fleet outside would have a fighting chance. Following Rachel's scanner, they located the central control room, a cavernous chamber filled with pulsating pods and towering consoles. At the center stood a massive machine, its surface writhing with tendrils of light. "This is it," Rachel said, her voice trembling slightly. "If we can overload this, we'll bring the shields down." Samantha stepped forward, pulling out her toolkit. "Give me a minute," she said, her hands moving deftly as she connected wires and rerouted power flows. The machine began to whine, its lights flashing erratically. Suddenly, the doors burst open and a group of Cytherian soldiers stormed in. They were taller than humans, their elongated limbs ending in razor-sharp claws. Their exoskeletons gleamed menacingly in the low light, and their multifaceted eyes locked onto the intruders with cold precision. Kevin opened fire immediately, his shots ricocheting off their armored hides. "Take cover!" he shouted, diving behind a console as the aliens advanced. Ethan joined the fight, firing blindly as he tried to keep the creatures at bay. Rachel scrambled to assist Samantha, shielding her from harm as the engineer worked frantically to finish the job. Sparks flew as the machine groaned louder, its systems on the verge of collapse. "Almost there," Samantha yelled, her voice strained. With one final twist of her wrench, the machine exploded in a shower of sparks and smoke. The lights flickered, then died completely, plunging the room into darkness. Outside, the effects were immediate. The outpost shields collapsed, leaving it vulnerable to attack. The fleet seized the opportunity, unleashing a barrage of missiles and plasma blasts. Explosions rocked the structure, sending shockwaves rippling through its metallic frame. "We did it!" Rachel exclaimed, relief washing over her face. But their victory was short-lived. The Cytherians regrouped quickly, swarming the control room with terrifying speed. Kevin fired until his clip ran empty, reloading just as another wave surged forward. Ethan pulled Rachel to her feet, shouting, "We need to get out of here, now." Retreating, as fast as they could, the team made their way back to the airlock. Behind them, the outpost began to crumble, its structural integrity failing under the relentless assault from the fleet. By the time they reached the red horizon, the ship was already pulling away, dodging debris and enemy fire. As they re-entered the cockpit, Ethan slumped into his seat, his hands shaking slightly. "That was too close," he muttered, glancing at the others. Rachel nodded, still catching her breath. "But we did it. We hit them where it hurts." On the comms, Laura's voice broke through the static. "Good work, team. The outpost is falling apart. Let's finish this." The fleet pressed the advantage, launching a final wave of attacks that reduced the structure to rubble. Fire and metal rained down into the void, marking the end of the Cytherian stronghold. For the first time since Earth's destruction, humanity tasted victory. But even as the ships regrouped and tended to their wounded, the weight of what lay ahead settled over them. This was only the beginning. The Cytherians wouldn't stop, not until humanity was erased entirely. And though they had struck a blow, the war was far from over. Ethan stared out at the wreckage, his jaw tightening. "They'll pay for what they did," he said quietly. "Every last one of them." The others nodded in agreement, their resolve hardened by the battle they had just fought. Whatever the future held, they were ready to face it, together.